4 June 1942, roughly 320 kilometers northwest of Midway Atoll in the Pacific Ocean. Dawn breaks across a sea that appears calm, almost indifferent to the violence gathering beyond the horizon. American sailors move quietly across the deck of an aircraft carrier as the first light touches the steel edges of parked aircraft. Engines cough into life. Flight deck crews signal with colored paddles. The smell of fuel hangs in the air. Somewhere beyond that vast expanse of water, a powerful Japanese fleet is advancing. At the center of this scene stands a warship unlike any the world had seen only a generation earlier. Not a battleship bristling with giant guns, not a cruiser built for speed. Instead, a floating airfield capable of carrying dozens of aircraft hundreds of kilometers across the ocean. On this morning, that carrier is the USS Yorktown, damaged only weeks earlier during the Battle of the Coral Sea and hastily repaired in a remarkable 72-hour effort at Pearl Harbor. She has returned to combat when many believed she should still be in dry dock. The flight deck trembles beneath accelerating aircraft. One after another, American bombers launch into the sky. Sailors watch them disappear into the distance. No one knows precisely what awaits them. Somewhere beyond that horizon, Japanese carriers are preparing aircraft of their own. Both sides understand the stakes. The next few hours may decide the future of the Pacific War. The carrier itself seems almost alive. Her elevators lift aircraft from cavernous hangars below. Her engines drive more than 20,000 tons of steel through the ocean at speeds exceeding 30 knots. Radar operators scan the skies for danger. Damage control teams stand ready in case disaster strikes. Every compartment, every cable, and every machine contributes to a single purpose: projecting air power across an ocean so fast that traditional naval warfare suddenly appears outdated. For centuries, naval power had depended upon ships seeing one another. Battleships exchanged fire across visible horizons. Admirals measured strength by the caliber of their guns. Yet the aircraft carrier changed everything. It transformed distance from a barrier into an advantage. An enemy fleet could now be attacked long before it ever came into sight. On this June morning, Japan fears more than a single ship. It fears what that ship represents, because carriers like Yorktown are changing the nature of warfare itself, and the Pacific Ocean will never be the same again. The need for such vessels emerged from a difficult reality. The Pacific is enormous, stretching across more than 165 million square kilometers. It presents logistical challenges unlike anything faced in Europe. Fleets could travel for days without encountering an enemy. Even the most powerful naval guns rarely reach beyond 40 kilometers. An admiral might possess immense firepower yet remain unable to find or strike an opponent hidden beyond the horizon. Before aircraft carriers became dominant, battleships ruled the seas. Massive vessels such as those built by Japan, Britain, and the United States carried guns weighing hundreds of tons. These weapons could devastate enemy ships once contact was made. The problem was finding those targets in the first place. Reconnaissance aircraft launched from cruisers offered some assistance, but their range and effectiveness remained limited. Japan recognized this challenge early. By 1941, it had assembled one of the world's most formidable carrier forces. The attack on Pearl Harbor demonstrated the destructive potential of naval aviation. More than 350 Japanese aircraft struck targets over 370 kilometers from their carriers. The lesson was unmistakable. Control of the air now mattered as much as control of the sea. The United States faced a serious disadvantage. Several battleships had been damaged or sunk at Pearl Harbor. Industrial strength remained enormous, but warships could not be built overnight. The Navy required a means of fighting immediately while simultaneously preparing for a long conflict stretching across thousands of kilometers of ocean. Aircraft carriers offered the answer, yet they introduced their own difficulties. They were expensive, mechanically complex, and vulnerable. A single bomb or torpedo could cripple flight operations. Maintaining aircraft, fuel supplies, and trained crews demanded extraordinary organization. Building one carrier required vast quantities of steel, specialized machinery, and thousands of skilled workers. The challenge seemed almost impossible. America needed ships capable of carrying large air groups, surviving enemy attack, and operating independently across immense distances. They had to function as floating air bases while remaining fast enough to evade danger. Most importantly, they had to outperform Japan's experienced carrier fleet before the war was lost. The solution emerged through years of experimentation by the United States Navy and American shipbuilders. Yorktown, commissioned in 1937, represented one of the most successful results of that effort. Constructed at Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia, she embodied lessons learned from earlier carrier designs and pushed naval engineering into a new era. Measuring approximately 251 meters long, or 824 feet, Yorktown displaced more than 25,000 tons when fully loaded. Her flight deck stretched like a steel runway across the ocean. Beneath it lay hangar spaces large enough to house dozens of aircraft. Elevators moved planes between levels with remarkable efficiency, much like giant industrial lifts carrying vehicles between floors of a building. Her propulsion system generated roughly 120,000 horsepower. That output allowed speeds exceeding 32 knots, or nearly 60 kilometers per hour. For a vessel of such size, this was extraordinary. Imagine a moving steel fitty keeping pace with many modern ferries despite carrying aircraft, fuel supplies, ammunition, and a crew numbering more than 2,200 personnel. Aircraft formed the carrier's true weapon. Yorktown could operate roughly 90 aircraft depending on mission requirements. Fighters defended the fleet. Dive bombers attacked ships with remarkable precision. Torpedo aircraft struck from low altitude. Together, they created a striking range measured not in kilometers of gunfire but in hundreds of kilometers of flight. If you are finding this interesting, a quick subscribe helps more than you know.
Manufacturing such a vessel required coordination across numerous American industries. Steel arrived from mills across the country. Engines, turbines, electrical systems, and armaments came from specialized factories. Thousands of workers assembled components with tolerances demanding exceptional precision. Every completed carrier represented years of industrial effort condensed into a single warship. Operationally, Yorktown quickly proved her value. She participated in the Marshall-Scalbers raids, the Battle of the Coral Sea, and the pivotal Battle of Midway. At Coral Sea, aircraft launched from carriers fought a naval battle in which opposing fleets never directly saw one another. It was a revolutionary moment in military history. At Midway, Yorktown's aircraft helped locate and attack Japanese carriers. Pilots flew through anti-aircraft fire and hostile fighter opposition to deliver devastating strikes. Japanese crews suddenly realized enemy aircraft could appear from seemingly nowhere. Reports from the battle reveal confusion, urgency, and growing alarm as carrier aviation shattered assumptions about naval warfare. Some records remain incomplete, and individual accounts occasionally differ, yet the broader picture is clear. The psychological impact on Japanese commanders was profound. No section of ocean felt safe when enemy carriers might be operating nearby. Compared with Japanese contemporaries such as the carrier Akagi, Yorktown balanced speed, aircraft capacity, and survivability effectively. German naval planners explored carrier concepts, most notably the unfinished Graf Zeppelin, but Germany never developed a carrier force capable of matching Pacific operations. American carriers also differed from many Allied alternatives. British carriers often prioritized armored flight decks for protection, sometimes at the expense of aircraft capacity. American designs emphasized larger air groups and operational flexibility. This approach enabled greater striking power over long distances. The concept evolved rapidly. Later American carriers became larger, faster, and more capable, drawing directly upon operational lessons learned by ships like Yorktown. In that sense, her influence extended far beyond her own service life. The actual impact of Yorktown is difficult to overstate. Materially, she contributed to victories that shifted the balance of power in the Pacific. Psychologically, she helped demonstrate that naval aviation had replaced the battleship as the dominant instrument of sea power. Her loss at Midway after sustaining severe damage from Japanese attacks underscores both her vulnerability and her importance. Even as she sank, the strategic tide had already begun to turn. The carrier's aircraft and crew had played a crucial role in one of the most decisive battles of the war. Today, surviving artifacts, photographs, and historical records preserve her story. While the ship itself rests beneath the Pacific, her legacy survives in every modern carrier that sails the world's oceans. And so the story returns to that morning on 4 June 1942. The rising sun, the endless ocean, the aircraft disappearing into the distance, sailors standing on a flight deck, unaware that they are witnessing the future of naval warfare unfolding before their eyes. Yorktown was not the largest carrier of the war, she was not the most heavily armed, she was not invulnerable, yet she arrived at precisely the moment history demanded her presence. She carried aircraft instead of giant guns. She projected power across horizons rather than merely beyond them. She transformed the Pacific from an obstacle into a battlefield that could be controlled through air power. Japan entered the war believing its carrier fleet would dominate the ocean. For a time, that belief seemed justified. Then ships like Yorktown challenged that assumption. They proved that American industry, engineering, and determination could adapt with astonishing speed. The carrier became more than a vessel. It became a symbol of a new age, an age in which victory belonged not to the fleet that could see furthest, but to the fleet that could strike first, not to the ship with the biggest guns, but to the ship carrying the most effective aircraft. That is why Japan feared these carriers, not because of a single battle, not because of a single ship, but because they represented a future that could no longer be stopped. A steel runway on the sea, a moving airfield, a weapon that changed an ocean, and changed the world.